Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stand. My name is Levin2K and I'm here to give you the press conference from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer ahead of our game against Aston Villa over the weekend. And to be fair, I don't really have much feelings surrounding this press conference. It's a weird one. It's a bit of a shorter one because they have split it up. I believe they've not showed certain parts of the press conference because they will show them later on in the evening. And, you know, the bits from later on in the evening will go in the press tomorrow morning in the Saturday newspapers, whatever. I don't really know how it works, but nevertheless, we do have some things to discuss. I'll start off by saying I appreciate everybody that's here right now. Be sure to like the video. Let me know if you watched the press conference. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. The journalists were allowed to ask a lot of follow-up questions, which is exciting, right? Because the big problem we have with press conferences, and the big problem that journalists themselves will tell you they have with press conferences, is that you're not often allowed to ask follow-up questions, right? So it causes a bit of a dilemma. They were allowed follow-up questions, but a lot of them, no disrespect, weren't the most interesting, I'm not a journalist, I don't get paid to do it, but I think we all know that sometimes they are a bit off. Colston, I appreciate the $2, man. Says, love you, man. I love you too. I love all of you guys. Look, we'll get into it because right before the press conference started, we did get word from Ollie himself that Cavani is back in the squad and he's back fit and he's back training. And I think that is good. You look at the past couple of weeks, the start to the season, it was starting to get a bit weird with Cavani. If you felt like it was a bit weird, let me know, because honestly, I was thinking it must be more than an injury here, right? I did start to have that sort of feeling in my heart because he was out. It was like a strain. We weren't told where the strain was. It was like he's not even been back training. It was all really weird stuff. And of course, we knew what happened with the international break where he wasn't allowed to leave and he literally was publicly upset about that. So it did seem like there was a bit of a rift there. I've heard rumors that he might have had another kid. I've heard loads of things with Cavani, right? I've heard loads about Cavani, but it's good to know that he is back in the squad. And we'll talk more about Cavani a bit later because he was asked about Cavani and the relationship he's going to have this season in the squad and how that's all going to work out. So we'll get to that. But the first sort of question he was asked, he was essentially asked about, David. I know that was actually the second question. Either way, he was asked about David De Gea relatively early on in the press conference, and he was asked about how last season David had a spell where he wasn't necessarily playing games week in, week out. Was that a good thing? How has that affected David? And Ollie came out and said, look, David this summer called me up and he said, look, I want to come back from my holiday early. I want to get ready for the new season. And, the fact that that was sort of the first thing Ollie pointed to when answering this question tells you what he wants, right? He wants players like that. He wants players who are hungry, who want to come back early and work hard to fight for their position. And that's what De Gea did this season. And look how it's paying off for us. He's been in brilliant form thus far. He talked about how, last season wasn't amazing for David because he wasn't able to play as much as he wanted because of how excellent Dean Henderson was. And then he also talked about how, with Tom Heaton now, he has so many great options there. But David has been, fighting for his spot and he's been playing excellently. This is an interesting one because we've all talked about, we all talk about the goalkeeping, argument and debate. And I think lots of people had their own preference coming into the season. Regardless of who you'd rather have in goal, I think it's fair to say David De Gea does not deserve to be dropped at all in any of the major competitions. And so, we're at a standstill right now. The problem emerges when David De Gea has a bad performance. What happens, right? It's bound to happen. He is a human. He is a man. And so there is bound to be one sort of mistake. And when that happens, are fans going to jump on him and say, oh, get Dean Henderson in? Or are we going to, stick beside him and trust in him as I believe we should? Because as much as Dean Henderson's great, and I don't dislike Dean Henderson, I think he's got plenty of potential. I don't think he's at the level of David De Gea. I think it's unfair to De Gea to sort of, really jump on his back the moment he makes a mistake, or the moment Dean Henderson maybe does something that makes you think, oh, he should be the one in goal. Of course, Dean Henderson actually came out on social media the past sort of since the game, I guess. And he essentially was like, look, even though the result wasn't what we wanted, it was good to be back in front of a full Old Trafford. And it's funny because Dean Henderson has this whole, his own thing, right? Like, every player has their own thing, right? But his thing is like the back on top, right? He puts the back on top emojis. And I saw a couple of people getting frustrated by that. I think they don't realize that's his thing. Like, he does it with everything. Like, he puts back on top. And I think a lot of people saw it as disrespectful to David because they felt like, oh, he's just coming to try to steal a spot or cause issues. You know, it's not that deep. Not everything is that deep. But nevertheless, how this goalkeeper situation progresses over the season, my opinion, I hope it is just David. I think he's been great. But you never know with Ollie. You never know with Ollie whatsoever. I want to see what you guys are saying. Dean needs to go on loan, if not be sold. When did Henderson play well? It's just hype. Henderson, well, look, you know, I think maybe there is a chance that will happen in the January transfer window. If he's not playing enough games, if he isn't getting the game time he wants, there is a chance that he might end up going out on loan because he wants to play first team football. Ultimately, he won't be happy just sitting on the bench, second fiddle. And when it comes to, you know, Dean not being good enough and all that, look, I think there was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of hype at a point last season. And I don't think when he got his chance, he grabbed it the way maybe, you know, people would have expected him to. And there's nothing wrong with that. He wasn't bad when he got a chance. He just wasn't elite. And I think that's why we're in a position where David ultimately is starting and there isn't really much of a question right now. Now, on to the next question. I've talked about De Gea for quite a while. But we'll move on to the next thing. Look, Dean Smith, the Aston Villa manager, he came out with some comments essentially talking about how he's looking forward to playing Ronaldo and, you know, the idea of stopping Ronaldo. And Ollie was asked about that, and Ollie was asked how he feels about that. And Ollie said, look, Ronaldo's used to that. You know, he's used to people wanting to, you know, play against whatever team he's on and stopping him, right? You know, he talked about how when Ronaldo was younger, it wasn't about, you know, stopping him and trying to beat him. It was more about kicking him, right? You know, you want to kick him, injure him, get him off the pitch because he was so tricky and hard to deal with in that sense. But now, you know, he's very much used to it. He knows people are coming at him, right? I remember at the West Ham game on Sunday, Ronaldo didn't do anything, but as soon as he touched the ball, all the West Ham fans booed, right? Like, he didn't do anything. It's not like he had dived, or it's not like he had, you know, just at the very, very start of the game, it's not like he had done anything. He got the ball and everyone just started booing, right? He's used to it. He is very much used to it. It doesn't faze him. Ronaldo is an absolute animal. He's a monster. These things do not bother him whatsoever. So, look, Dean Smith, they're going to come and they're going to try and put on a fight. And I believe they will. Aston Villa have looked impressive in certain spells this season. But ultimately, we have a Ronaldo. So hopefully we can put in a good performance and get him a couple more goals. His goal scoring record's been brilliant thus far. I'll read out one of the quotes from Solskjaer. He said, everyone had to have an eye on Cristiano. His record, he's used to that challenge. We're a team, more than just Cristiano, which is important. And the players I've got to choose from would enjoy if they had too much. It would enjoy if they had too much of an eye on Cristiano. It might give space for others. And that's true. You know, as much as I don't believe Ronaldo is going to be a decoy this season, he does help alleviate the pressure of some of our other stars. You know, you look at the likes of Bruno and Sancho, who's trying to ease his way in. You look at the likes of Greenwood, who there will be a lot of pressure being started to put on Greenwood because ultimately he is going to be the next England number 9, right? That's the trajectory of his career right now. He has been brilliant for us this season. There's a lot of pressure that could be put on certain different players, but when you have Ronaldo, everything almost gravitates towards him when it comes to, you know, the pressure in that sense. And so it can open up opportunities and space for other players in the squad, which is a brilliant thing. And he will handle that excellently. He's Cristiano Ronaldo. He was asked about Cavani again, and this was the sort of quote from it. He said, he's in the squad tomorrow, he's been training, and now he feels ready to contribute. He came on against Wolverhampton, and then he got a slight strain in the international break when we had a game, and he's ready again. He's worked really hard and diligently, and hopefully he'll have impact as he did last season. Yeah, look, I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to Cavani being back. I have said on this channel before, for the people who wonder, like, what is Cavani's role going to be this season within our squad? Where does Cavani fit in? Because ultimately, you know, I had Jordy and I were talking about this before the show. It's like, well, you know, if Ronaldo's 75% fit, you know, he starts over Cavani still, right? You know, because Ronaldo just is that guy. He is nailed on to start if he can play. And I said to him, and I've said to people on the channel as well before, I don't think Cavani's necessarily going to be a starter, and I don't think there's a problem with that. You look at what Cavani was for us the majority of last season, even if it wasn't necessarily by design, you know, he was the guy that would come on and make an impact off the bench. He was the best plan B possible, right? We all remember that Southampton game where he subbed on and the game turns around and we win. you know, he was essentially the guy that would be subbed on and come on and change the game. I believe his role very much will be similar this season, where he's going to be tasked with coming on. Ronaldo will shift out wide to the left a bit, and Cavani and Ronaldo will both operate in the box against low blocks, and that is going to be the threat that they pose for us. You look at Cavani last season, he started half of his Premier League games, and realistically, you could make the argument that it would have been less if Martial didn't get injured and was in bad form, right? You know, it's not like he started every single game. We relied on him towards the end of the season, but it's mainly because we had to, right? I don't think Oli will feel like he has to, because we have Ronaldo, and so he has the luxury of being able to bring Cavani onto impact games, and I'm sure Cavani will even start games sometimes, but I wouldn't be worried about what Cavani's role is. Super Sub Eddie says Advath Warrior in the chat, and I 100% agree with that. And to be fair, Oli actually did talk about this, right? Oli was asked a question about, you know, that relationship between Cavani and Ronaldo, and said, look, let me try. Let me find the exact quote, and I'll read it out to you instead of, you know, paraphrasing. Solskjaer and Cavani and Cristiano, I'm sure that will be a good partnership as well. We see teams dropping deep against us, not giving us space in behind, and there are two boys who you'd like to see in that scenario. I can see those working well together, and that's incredibly true. It's incredibly true, and that's going to be something to watch out for. You look at, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo when he was playing for Portugal in the international break before he joined us officially. It's a terrible game for Portugal, all 90 minutes. He drifts out left in the last couple of minutes of the game. He scores 2 headers, right? And, you know, the team, I forgot what team they were playing now. I think was it Ireland? It might have been Ireland. But, you know, they were playing very much against a low block, and Ronaldo was attacking that back post. Now, you think about our scenarios, right? We're going to be in scenarios where we're playing against low blocks. Ronaldo will drift out a bit wide left. Cavani will come up front. And you have a situation where you have Cavani attacking the front post, Ronaldo attacking the back post. All you got to do is get the balls in the box. You know, all you got to do is get the balls in the box, and, you know, something will happen. Something will come of it. Both of them have excellent movement, right? We all talked about how brilliant Cavani's movement was last season. Ronaldo is just as good, if not better, when it comes to his movement. It's the reason why he's been able to score all these, you know, rebound goals, etc., because he's the one that's sharpest, right? He's the one that's always alive. His movement is so quick. Defenders can't track him. Like, you actually think about it, you know, when Ronaldo gets in those situations where he is just alone in the box or something, you know, a defender would be thinking the whole time, we got to watch out for Ronaldo. Like, he's the main priority, and yet he still finds a way to get open and get space because he's just so excellent. So we're going to have a massive threat when those two come in to the squad together. That's going to be something that hopefully will create a lot of goals for us. Now, I'll address it because it was something that was asked, but, you know, Solskjaer was asked about safe standing, and he was asked about the possibility of that coming in because, you know, it's going to be trialed now. And he essentially said it's a good thing. It helps with the atmosphere, which it does, right? When people are standing up safely, you know, the atmosphere does tend to be much better. You know, we've seen it used around Europe, and it's effective, and it's going to come in now, which is only a positive, I guess. Moving forward, there weren't many more questions left, but we will try and get something for you. Solskjaer was asked. He was asked about clean sheets, right? He was asked about, you know, we've obviously started off the season in the Premier League well. We're up there in points. You know, it's been a much better start than, you know, the past couple seasons. But he was asked about the fact that we've not really been able to keep clean sheets in the past sort of 15 competitive games. We've conceded quite a few goals. And Oli essentially said, look, in the league so far this season, we've conceded 4 goals. Look, I'd love to bring you guys clean sheets, but ultimately that's still a work in process with, you know, with integrating Rafa into the defense. You know, this is going to be something that comes over time, and hopefully by the game against Aston Villa, after the game against Aston Villa, I can come to you and we have a clean sheet. You know, he essentially talks about how, look, we are a team that we're going to score so many goals. And you look at the attacking talent we have, we're going to score so many goals. And of course, yes, we're also going to try to bring you clean sheets, but that's something that is sort of a work in progress. And it's funny because he sort of did the typical Oli thing where he got a bit frustrated, but you could tell he got a bit frustrated by it because ultimately, you know, he does see that as one of those sort of media things. And I'll read out what he said. He said, it just shows the angle you've looking at it and thinking, I'd rather score 4 or 5 or 2 and concede 1 than win 1-0. We're still working on cohesion with Raphael coming in. And essentially, when he's saying it shows the angle, like he's basically saying, look, stop being negative. Like that's what you wanted to say, right? You wanted to say, stop being, stop being a Debbie Downer. We've been scoring goals. That's the important thing. And we are going to work on bringing you clean sheets. But ultimately, we're out here scoring goals. We're out here trying to entertain. I think that's the point he was trying to make there. So I think the reporter probably felt a bit silly for that one. He was asked a question about the Ryder Cup. I'm not going to address it. I will just squeeze it in there. He was asked a question about the Ryder Cup. I don't know much about. I don't watch much golf or whatever, so I can't really comment on it. I think he was asked about a fellow Norwegian, sportsman who's in the Ryder Cup. If you care about the Ryder Cup, I'm sure you would have been happy to hear that question. But if you're like me, weren't too bothered. Afternoon Ruth, thank you very much. Guys, let me know what you thought of those questions that he was asked. For the most part, that was it. I think there will be more questions that come out as the day sort of progresses, because, whatever arrangement they have with the media to do that is where it is. But let me know. I think when you look at that press conference, there's a couple things you could probably take away from that. The first thing I'd take away is obviously Cavani being back. I think that's very exciting for us. You look at the possibilities of him coming into the squad and the role he plays. As much as I think there was people who was very excited to see him start this season, like before we knew we were getting Ronaldo, I was very excited at the possibility of Cavani like starting week in, week out. But as we've seen to the start of the season, it's good that we almost didn't have to rely on him for that, because he's not been available for the majority of it. And so we would have had Martial. And as much as I don't hate Martial, there's something not right there at the moment. And so that would have been a problem for us realistically. But now that he does seem to be back, I'm very excited about that. There was a report at the start of last summer, right, where it said something like, Cavani's expected to only play about 60% of games. And I didn't really believe it back then, but it does almost feel like that now. It does almost feel like that now, where he has missed a couple, and it does feel like this will be a running theme where he misses a couple around international breaks and whatnot. Hopefully it doesn't materialize into being 60%. I'll take 80%. 80% ain't too bad. Was Donny mentioned, Levin? Donny was not mentioned in this press conference. Donny was not mentioned in this press conference one bit. I almost feel like Ollie doesn't like being asked about Donny, and the reporters know that, and so they don't ask about Donny to stay in his sort of good books there. But in terms of Donny, I think the only conversation that there is to be had right now is when is he going to get a chance now that the Carabao Cup, now that we're out of that, right? Realistically, that was his stomping ground to show that he's good enough. And I think he did. I think he very much did in that last game. The question is Ollie going to trust him to play him in the Premier League now and in other competitions? I hope so. I'm not optimistic of it though, because you look at now with Cavani being back, Cavani is ahead of, in terms of like, you make 3 substitutions in a game, right? Cavani's ahead of him. From what we've seen from the evidence, Ollie is going to pick Lingard ahead of him. So Lingard's ahead of him. It's not ideal right now. And of course, with Rashford coming back and, technically one of Greenwood is and Sancho's usually going to be on the bench, or Martial, there's just so many people who are going to be ahead of him when it comes to being subbed on in games. And unfortunately, I just don't think he's going to get much of an opportunity, which is frustrating, because I like Donny, and I think, when he plays, he very much impresses. He's actually showed me improvement and development. Like, you look at that last game in the Carabao Cup, he showed sort of a willingness to, sit deeper and play sort of line-breaking passes and these sort of balls over the top, like the Greenwood chance. And that's something that I thought Ollie would be happy to see from him, right? Which would make him more likely to come on. You look at the West Ham game, we were absolutely, sort of shocking the midfield in the second half when it came to bringing the ball out of the midfield and pushing it forward. And Ollie felt, look, I need someone who's going to control the game a bit better and play these line-breaking passes. He brought on Matic, right? In an ideal world for all of us, we'd say, no, don't bring on Matic, bring on Donny. And I think Donny has showed that he probably can do that. And so hopefully he gets a chance in that role. But, I don't see it. Cal says, Levin needs to check the barber. Hey, big man, you need to watch your mouth. I'm going to the barber today, so don't even try it, bro. Don't even try it. I know the trim's a bit mad, but you gotta work with what you gotta work with. Was Sancho mentioned, Levin? Sancho was not mentioned. Cara's asking me if he was mentioned. Sancho was not mentioned. I don't really have much to say on Sancho. I don't really. The conversation around Sancho right now is just have a bit of patience. And I think most people who are realistic aren't don't have problems with Sancho. But I do get that there will be talks around Sancho and people being concerned. So tired of talking about Donny. He's gone, whether we like it or not. He's never getting a chance as a United player. That might be the harsh reality. That might be the harsh reality that we have to face at some point soon, because, you know, based off of what we've seen from Ollie and the decisions he makes, I don't see where I don't see where Donny is gonna come in. I just don't see it at the moment. What else was there again? There was obviously one of the other takeaways is the De Gea thing. That's how it should be. When it comes to De Gea, that's how it should be. He should be the one starting. He should be the one in the net in more games than not, because he's earned that right. He's shown that he's good enough. He's made some key saves for us this season. He's been brilliant in my eyes, and so I'm happy about De Gea. I'm happy about De Gea. What about penalties and referees? Oh, who's that? Priyank Shah. Shout out to you. Shout out to you. How could I forget? How could I forget about penalties and referees? Absolute legend. So you're saving me here. Ollie was actually asked about penalties. He was asked about penalties. And it was a bit of a chippy quote, which is what I liked about it. It was a bit of a chippy one, because he essentially was asked about the fact that decisions haven't been going our way. He was asked about, how this season there have been a couple of instances where we should have had penalties, definitely, and we weren't given penalties. And I'll give you the quote from that one. He said, we just have to hope we get what we deserve. We should have had 3 penalties in the last 2 games. There are certain managers, Klopp, who worried about us getting pens last year, and after that, the decisions were different to give. I've seen a big difference since then on. Leave it to the refs and to make the right calls very, very soon. Look, we've spoken about this on the channel. We have spoken about this on the channel. Last year, Klopp started running his mouth. I think Mourinho was running his mouth as well. Klopp and Mourinho all running their mouth about us getting too many penalties, blah, blah, blah. All now, Leicester had more penalties than us, by the way. When they were saying this, Leicester had more penalties than us, but all now Klopp and all the Liverpool fans and all the other fans in the Premier League are Penchester United, absolute nonsense. When, honestly, like, I'll be real, I'm a very fair person. I'll say when I don't think something's a pen or when I do think something's a pen. Last season, I think there was only one time where we got a pen and I thought, oh, we've gotten away with one there. We probably didn't deserve that. All of our pens were stonewall and they were deserved. But yet, other teams and whatnot, they had a problem with it. And, Ollie's right. Since Klopp and all the Klopp fans or whatever started coming out and saying what they had to say, we started getting less pens. We did. And we've been affected. I think you look at some of the decisions that have been made this season, I don't see how we've not had more pens. And it's funny because a lot of us are curious to see, us have a penalty because we want to see who takes it, Ronaldo or Bruno. But genuinely, we should have had them. Like, we actually should have had them, and they could have affected us in games. They actually did affect us in a game, right? If you look at the game that we just played against West Ham. And so if this is going to be a consistent theme where we're not getting penalties when we should be getting penalties, like, it's not even like, it's a bit mad because some of these have gone to VAR and we've not gotten them, which I don't really get. But nevertheless, thank you very much for reminding me about that, because Ollie did have something to say on penalties and our lack of penalties. Look, teams are scared of us getting penalties now. Of course they are. Of course they are. I think you look at all the people we have in our team now, we have so many players who are a threat in the box, and therefore, we have a much higher chance of getting more penalties than we had last year. You look at the likes of Sancho coming in, Ronaldo coming in. These guys are all going to be threats when it comes to us winning penalties. We've literally seen Ronaldo win us what should have been 2 or 3 penalties now. And so that is going to be something to watch out for. If we still are not getting the penalties we deserve, I don't even know what we could do. I'll be honest, I don't even know what we could do. But yeah, it's a bit outrageous that we haven't had a penalty. 11, quick question for you. Are all the questions at the press conference spontaneous or pre-approved, i.e. controlled by Ollie and the press office? I don't think they are pre-approved and controlled, but I don't know. Maybe there is somebody that has better insight into that. I'd assume they aren't. But sometimes I get this is just a personal opinion, this isn't a fact or anything. Sometimes I get the feeling that certain journalists know not to ask certain questions because they want to be invited back for the next one, or they want to make sure that there isn't any sort of animosity there. Like they want to maintain a good relationship between themselves and Ollie and the club. Hey, 11 triple captain Ronaldo, the stream's turned into FPL advice. I don't know, man. I'm doing all right in FPL. I'm not doing too great. I think I might wild card or something. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. They have banned Donny questions defo. That might be something, Advath. That might be something, because I ain't heard a Donny question in a while. They are just told what not to ask about, says Hassan. So Hassan in chat says they're told what not to ask about. Maybe that's the thing. Does United media team control who get invited to press conferences? I'd assume so, yes. Guys, keep your questions coming in. Keep your questions coming in. If you have any questions about the press conference, about anything that was said, let's keep the conversation going. Another quote from Ollie about the penalties. He just said we should have had 3 penalties in 2 games last season. There was a certain manager who worried about us getting penalties. Yeah, that's it. I wish Ollie was a bit more ruthless and fearless on the pitch and played a much more expansive brand of football. Was Dean Henderson mentioned? He was mentioned, Cara. He was mentioned. Cara, maybe you should go back in the video. Yeah, he was mentioned. He essentially was asked whether Dean Henderson playing last season, affected David De Gea and how that's affected him and how he's sort of bounced back stronger since then. And it was a good thing. It was only a good thing. Dean Henderson was mentioned in the capacity of he was impressive last season and it stopped David from getting into the team, but David bounced back better from that now, and now David's starting. So, 11, why don't you become one of those people that ask Ollie the questions? Well, you know what? Maybe I will dedicate my life and career to being a journalist, and maybe I will get the chance to ask Ollie a question one day. I think that'd be great. Do you think the press conference should have focused more questions about the upcoming game? Yeah, there was only the one question about Aston Villa and Dean Smith, and it wasn't really about them. It was just more so about what Dean Smith had said. I would like for them to ask more questions about, what's actually going to be happening coming up this weekend. I think there's plenty of questions you could ask about, the threat Aston Villa poses and whatnot. But ultimately, the questions we get sometimes can be a bit, like I still can't believe he was asked a question about the Ryder Cup. And I don't have a problem with sort of banter questions, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with journalists asking cheeky little questions that aren't necessarily relevant, just for a bit of humor or whatever. But there's a time and a place, and I just didn't think this was the time and the place. Didn't think so. 11, what do you think the score will be? Guys, I've been wrong with every score prediction. I've told you guys this before. I've tried to predict every game. I've tried to predict matches, other teams' matches in the Premier League, and I've been wrong on every single one this season, I think, except for Chelsea versus Tottenham last week. So I'm probably going to be wrong again, but I'm going to go 2-1 United. We scored 2, Aston Villa 1. I know, I can already hear him in my ear. I can hear him in my ear. Drawty's in my ear right now going 7-0. So yeah, if you think it's going to be 7-0 like Drawty, let me know in the chat. Let me know your score prediction though, because mine's probably going to be wrong. 11, how do you think the attacking situation will play out once Rashford returns? Once Rashford returns, I can very much envisage a scenario where Rashford starts on the left, Ronaldo up front, and either Greenwood or Sancho off the right, depending on who Ollie feels on the given opponent and game. And I think what we'll see is one of Greenwood or Rashford, one of Greenwood or Sancho or Rashford subbed off for Cavani maybe an hour in. That I expect that to be the sort of regular rotation. So one of the wingers will get subbed off, Cavani will come on, Ronaldo will drift out left, and then whoever will fill in on the right. I think that's probably what the rotation will be like for a lot of this season. And I think that's a good rotation to have. I think that will be really effective for us. We have lots of different types of attacking threats that we can utilize in different games. Maybe we'll see a scenario similar to what we have with the midfield. And I know a lot of people don't like how the midfield works, but the way the midfield works for us right now is in games where he feels like the midfield battle might be a bit harder to win, it might be a bit more physical and combative, he goes with McFred. In games where he feels like we will easily dominate the midfield battle and we will control games, he goes with Matic and Donny, right? So we could see a sort of similar thing with the attack where he might say, oh, look, against teams where you might have a bit more space in behind, I'll play, Sancho and Rashford. Against teams where maybe they're going to sit in a lower block, I'll play Greenwood. We could see a sort of similar thing with the attacking front line. Was Fred mentioned? No, Fred was not mentioned. A lot of players weren't mentioned. In total, 4 players were mentioned. Technically 5 if you count him saying Tom Heaton's name in a brief moment, right? So not many people were mentioned, if we're being honest. 3-2 game, 3-2 Villa. Whoa, what do you mean 3-2 Villa? You better ease off. 3-0. What's with the 7-0 prediction? The 7-0 prediction is not from me. It's from my good friend Jorty, who is in my ear right now. I can hear him. We got a super chat from Paulo Reese, who says, sorry if you answered this, but how do you think Oli will incorporate Cavani and Ronaldo? No way CR7 gets dropped. I just explained it, Paulo. I just explained it. I think your super chat was just after I explained it, so hopefully you'll be satisfied. But if not, I just think Cavani will be subbed on in lots of games, and when he's subbed on, Ronaldo will drift out left, and Cavani will be the central number 9. You sexiness, thank you. I don't get called sexy quite often. I get my voice, people call my voice sexy, but not me, especially not with this trim. Hassan says, 11, with the treatment of Donny aside, what do you think about Frankie de Jong? Personally, I would love him at United, as I think he would make our midfield levels better. In terms of a midfielder who is everything we need, and maybe even more, yes, Frankie de Jong is exactly that. Unfortunately, I'm forcing myself to believe it's not a possibility because it probably isn't. And so, yeah. But Frankie de Jong would be exactly what we need and more. 11, if you could play with the United team, where would you play? I'd play number 6. I'll be our holding midfielder, guys. I'll be the holding midfielder we need. You know, play Donny next to me or play Pogba next to me, and 21's loading. 21's loading. Don't lie to me and say you love my trim, man. I got people lying to me in the chat and that, man. You guys got to keep it honest with me. Look, guys, I'm going to go get a trim. So next time you see me on the channel, I will have a fresh trim. So none of you, man, can even via the trim any longer. The Young would be perfect, I agree. Thank you guys for the super chats. Thank you guys for hanging out. There weren't many questions in this press conference because they're saving them for later, which is a bit frustrating for us because I'd love to talk about more, and I'd love to hear more of the questions Oli was asked, because I'm sure he was asked about some of the things that we haven't heard about. But nevertheless, we're just going to have to wait till the evening for that. Either way, though, thank you guys for hanging out. It's been 11-2K. You can catch you on all social media, not social media, at 11-2K. It's just 11 without the E, and then number 2K. Thank you very much for hanging out. See you guys all.